Kathy, welcome.
Hello.
How are
Thank
you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you? I'm really glad to be here.
Well, good. I'm glad to see you. I've known you for quite some time, but not very well in the beginning. And lately, it's like I would call you up at, 7 o'clock in the morning. Kathy, please, and ask you questions.
Yes, and odd hours in the night.
All hours, actually. The first time we met was at the National Women's Music Festival. The second or third, I was singing in the choir, you were singing in the choir. I think we were both altos.
Yep, definitely.
Yes?
Alto 1.
I was probably lower than you were.
Probably.
As is my want. And we were singing on Margie Adams' "We Shall Go Forth," or however that goes.
Yep, I remember it clearly, and I remember you standing on the stage, and I think Betsy Lippitt was there too, but you made this comment. You said, "Many of you out there may not know anything about Cincinnati, but it's one of the greatest places." And I turned to the person I was with and I went,
Cincinnati.
And never thinking for 1 minute, of course, in 1976 or 7, that I would be here. But thank you for that.
Oh, sure.
It was a great influence on me.
Many women have said that to me, that I would go out and sing Annie Darneman's "Ohio Heart," and "Do you know what's around on both ends?" and talk about Ohio and Cincinnati, and they would just want to move here.
It happened. I'm living proof.
That's right. I think the Chamber of Commerce should give me a little pin.
A little pin or a plaque. Yeah.
That's right. So you got here from Philadelphia, but you started choral stuff like way before that.
Right. In 1975, I began Anacrusis in Philadelphia, and that's the Anacrusis that's still going and had her 15th anniversary concert this past June.
God.
But before I got to Philadelphia, I was finishing up my master's in Madison, and I had a master's in conducting, and I had a little agreement with a friend. And she said, "Well, why don't you start a women's chorus?" And so the long and the short of it is I followed through, and my last year in Madison, I had a women's chorus, which was Anacrusis, but I took the name with me when I moved. There were 30 women, and
was that the first, do you think, in the country?
Oh, yeah, it was. There was a woman in New York who started Women Like Me, Roberta Cossi, but they only performed pieces that she wrote. But it's a women's choir. But I think this sort of Anacrusis is the first in this national movement now.
And there is a national movement.
Yes. There's a loosely organized group called the Sister Singer Network, and they comprise maybe 40 choruses in the United States, well, Canada, North America really, and include one in London, the Prima Donnas. And
Is that really their name?
Yeah, the Prima Donnas. And PRE, it has all sorts of meanings. And then there are 2 other women's choirs, but they're not in Europe, and they're not a part of the Sister Singers yet, just because we haven't gotten in touch with them. One in Berlin and one in Stockholm. But they're everywhere in the United States, on the eastern seaboard, on the western seaboard, a lot in the Midwest, very many in the Midwest. There's a new one now in Columbus that just started 6 months ago.
That's great. Did they ask you how to do it?
Well, I went up there and met with about 9 of them and did some talking with them for about an hour or 2, and then a little conducting. That was really in the early days. I think it was December.
They've got a conductor, and
I think they do.
Do they know what they want to sing?
They're working that out. You know what happens the first couple of, well, it's really years in a way. You have to struggle. What kind of organization are you going to have? What kind of music are you going to sing? Are you going to have one director or many directors? Where do you find an accompanist? The questions that most choirs go through. And they evolve their own structure, which is so wonderful about all of these choruses. So now I heard that they're up to 32 women.
Oh, great. Columbus.
Yep, so now we have 2 in Ohio.
That's right. I'm thinking of an article that was in Hotwire, the Journal of Women's Music and Culture, that you wrote specifically about women's culture in Ohio.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned, of course, MUSE.
Yes. I mentioned you, and so did many other people mention you
Yes.
as an inspiration, the Washington Sisters
Oh,
specifically.
yeah.
But in that article, I spoke about production companies, because we have one of the oldest in Ohio, Oven Productions up in Cleveland.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the Women's Union in Columbus is a very old one as well. So there's all this continuity of women's culture in Ohio. Of course, Crazy Ladies was in there, and of course,
Crazy Ladies
Betsy
Bookstore.
Lippett. Yes, Crazy Ladies Bookstore.
Yes, Betsy Lippett.
But I did an article. I went and talked to Dagmar Celeste.
Oh, God.
As
Good old
the heart of
Dagmar.
it all, and you know,
She's
she's
great.
been involved in women's culture and women's music, and so yeah, I did that, I guess, a year or two ago now.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm a writer for that, a regular writer,
Uh-huh.
and I've written about the Sister Singers Network, and then just recently I wrote about the big festival we had in Kansas City, where 9 choirs performed, and
Jeez.
representatives from 9 other women's choirs were there, and a great time was had by all.
That's great. So what I'd really like to do is keep talking, if that's all right with you. I feel like I never quite get enough. I don't know why that is. It's probably you're running around Ohio.